Dogs for Our Brave, next on City Corner.
All right, let's do it. All right, make me look good.
Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. You've just seen a very touching introduction to our guest and our topic today, Dogs for Our Brave. Typically, I do an introduction about what an organization is about, but I want you to hear it firsthand from the founder and president. So I'm pleased to introduce Andy Gladstein. He's the founder and president of Dogs for Our Brave. We're also joined on set by Corporal Christopher Miller, United States Marine Corps retired, and Zulu, who's taking a little nap there. But I love that video. I mean, without any words, it sort of gives just a glimpse into what the work that it is that you do in the organization you founded. But please tell us about Dogs for Our Brave, what it is and why you started it.
I started it as an anniversary gift for my wife after meeting a Navy Cross winner in Coronado, California, and asking, what do I get my wife for an anniversary present? And he said, get her a dog, have it trained for a veteran who's come back from the War on Terror, who's an amputee. And I said, wow, that's a great idea. How do I do that? He said, your problem. You figure it out. Okay, so we did. We found a beautiful yellow lab named Champ, trained Champ. Then we had to find a recipient. So we got a hold of a general in Washington, D.C. who was at Walter Reed. And he's walking down the ward one day, and this gentleman's walking towards him who's a double amputee with both his prosthetics. And he stopped him and said, hey, are you looking for a service dog? And his name was Andrew Smith. And Sergeant Smith said, well, yeah, but you never get one because the paperwork's this thick and you have to go through the VA. And he says, well, you got a dog. And Andrew started crying. Because the VA is not very receptive, in our opinion, to veterans. They're not very helpful. And we were so proud to get Andrew, to get him his dog. Mm-hmm. The dog has become his best friend next to his wife. And we gave him, we had a little ceremony in Coronado where my wife thought she was going to a party for her anniversary. And she walked in, and this gentleman with no legs walks up to her, and it was a pretty emotional moment. Wow. Introducing his new dog. Thanks to her, he was getting this dog, and it was just a great moment.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. And so from that moment, it grew into it was a 501c3. You really started to.
Well, it wasn't a 501c3 when we started, and then I went back to our home in the desert in Rancho Mirage. And all these friends are saying, well, I want to do the same thing for my wife. How do I do it? Well, we'll figure it out. And I talked to my wife. I said, let's start this organization. It won't be that big. It won't be that big a deal. And we started Dogs for Our Brave. And before you knew it, we were getting calls and emails from people that needed a dog, that wanted a dog, all these worthy heroes, as we call them. And you don't have to be in combat to get a dog from us. If you wore the uniform of the United States, you're eligible. Mm-hmm. And then we figured out, Sarah, that it wasn't really fair to the veterans to put them in a position where they have to decide, do I pay my rent or do I take my dog to the vet if it's sick? Or do I put food on the table for my family or take the dog to the vet if it's sick? And these dogs cost upwards of $15,000 each to train. So we came up with a program where we pay for all the food for life, all the pharmaceuticals for life, which are flea and tick and heartworm, which don't sound like a lot, but they really add up, and all their veterinary care for life. So there's no burden whatsoever on our heroes. Yeah. And they get this wonderful companion that is with them everywhere they go.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. And let's kind of move over to you, Chris. And first, I want to say thank you for your service and for your sacrifice. And thank you for being here today to really talk about your story. You've got Zulu resting there on your lap. How did you get connected with
Actually, I was actually in Florida. I took my wife to run the Walt Disney World Princess Run, and we stayed at the Shades of Green. And there was a military guy behind me, missing a limb. And never forget it. I turned around and looked at him. I said, "How you doing, brother?" I said, "What happened to your wheel?" And he looked at me and he says, "You got to be a jarhead." And I was like, "What's that mean?" You know. And I was talking to him about our injuries and stuff like that. And I was asking about his dog, and he says, "You know what?" He says, "It's funny you say that." He says, "I have the most amazing people that do nothing but care, and I tell you what, they'll bend over backwards to make sure they get you a dog." And from that day forward, I spoke with Andy on the phone. And it was just step by step. And almost a year later, everything was processed. They realized what needs I needed, what medical conditions I needed. And they said, "We have a dog that's yours, and it's coming to you one day." And I think I cried like a baby. My wife, Elizabeth, sat there, was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, and I told her, I'll never forget, you know, it was just that first step it was more than I could ever expect it, and it was amazing.
Well, if you don't mind, talk about that, if you don't mind, about those needs, the before Zulu came into your life, what it is that you were sort of facing and dealing with.
I have stability, mobility issues, PTSD, retrieving. I just had my 5th major back surgery a month ago. I have new synthetic vertebrae. They put new vertebrae in my back, new machines, metal, fusions. So me trying to retrieve anything nowadays, it just doesn't happen. So that's one of the things that she's really trained at. She will pick a credit card off the floor. And so she came to me like that. And one of the greatest things was, you know, I have my 3 boys. I have an older daughter and 3 little boys that I just want to go out and play with her. That at that age, 6, 3 and 1, I want to play ball. And that was one of the greatest things we did, because when Zulu and I was paired together, beforehand, I could throw the ball, I couldn't pick it up, a couple of times, and I was done. And it was the first week I got home, and I said, I got to try it. I was so excited. I told my son, I looked at Luca, and I said, "Luca, let's go out in the yard, buddy." And Liam and Colton sitting there, and they're all like, "What's going on?" And I sat there, and I had Zulu sitting down beside me. I threw the ball. He hit it. Zulu ran, grabbed it, brought it back over to me. She sat back down and laid down and said, "Let's do it again." And we did it all night. And it was one of the greatest things. That's just one of the things that she's helped me accomplish since we've been together.
Right, just a part of the fabric of your family.
Yeah, and it's a daily thing for me, because every day is a task. I used to sit at home and just be nervous about going places. I've had some bad issues with my medical problems that I've faced. And, I learned to just not go anywhere. And one thing that Zulu's given me is that freedom to know that I always have somebody, she's got my back.
And what is it that you want other veterans to know? I know before we started the show, you're like, I just want to keep getting this message out there. What is that? Speaking
with a lot of veterans, they're always worried about, taking care of the service dog. How much problem, do I got to take her to the restroom? I got to do this and that. What they don't understand, I want them to know, is they pretty much take care of themselves along with taking care of you. She lets me know when she has to use the restroom. She lets me know when I'm starting to have a bad day or starting to get nervous anxiety. And she comes up and she stops it all. And how she does it, I don't know, but I know she gives tons of love. And it's amazing, everything that she does.
Yeah, and life-changing. We're going to get into the training in the second half of the show, because we've got your head trainer here in studio.
I want to interject something.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about what happened to Chris.
Yes.
He was shot, stabbed, and fell off a 50-foot cliff and broke his back. So he kind of glosses over that, doesn't like to talk about it, but people need to know what our heroes go through and some of the injuries that they get. And that's what happened to this guy, champ here.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know sometimes there is that sort of area of the etiquette of how open one can be and what kind of questions we can ask. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, my final career injury was me and 2 other Marines took a 50-foot cliff fall. I broke my back. I was paralyzed for a while, in a wheelchair for almost 2 years. Between my head injury, my TBI, back issues, this and that. But I've had nothing but family support. And you know what? Andy and his family have become family to me. The whole, Dogs for Our Brave family has stepped up numerous times to help me out and give me that support. And I can only say thank you. I mean, it's amazing what they've done.
No, it really is amazing. I know that our show's going to air after something really special happens tomorrow that I think you're going to be at. But tell us what's happening. You have an open house, a new building, a new home.
We bought a building here in St. Louis in Dogtown. Go figure.
Fitting.
And we were to the point we were only able to train 1 or 2 dogs at a time because our trainer didn't have room. This new facility will give us the ability to train maybe 8 to 10 at one time. And it'll be a focal point for the organization. They'll be training there. That's where the service guys will come to meet their dogs. One of the things we do is every serviceman or woman, and we have women who get dogs also. One of the things we do is we have to pair them to the right match. If a serviceman, we have a couple right now that are double amputees from the waist down. So they're wheelchair bound, they can't get prosthetic legs. That's a totally different training regimen than a dog like for Chris.
Yes.
You have to have a dog that can pull a wheelchair. Andrew Smith, when he took his legs off at night, if he left his lights on in his room, he couldn't turn his lights off. So Champ was trained to pull a wheelchair if he needed, turn light switches on and off, down 911, open a refrigerator door, retrieve anything that he was supposed to retrieve on the command.
Yes.
Just remarkable things these dogs are able to do. Just remarkable.
No, I mean, I know from over the years when we've done interviews about service dogs, the training is so extensive and expensive. And I think what you're doing to provide this at no cost.
That was one of the biggest things I felt that blew me away when they told me, that they send food to my house every month. All the equipment that she needs is paid for, vet bills. And, it's kind of like a dream. You're like, come on. He's like, I'm telling you, absolutely. Zero cost to you, training, continuous training, helping throughout. They don't leave your side. And that's one of the things about Dogs for Our Brave that blew me away.
Yeah. Well, we've got some information. Thank you. And we've got some information there for you on the screen before we go to break. It's Dogs for Our Brave. This is their location, not far from here in the studio, right there in Dogtown, as Andy pointed out. For more information, you can head to dogsforourbrave.com or call the number on your screen, 800-509-5451. But don't go anywhere. We've been talking about the training that takes place, and we're going to learn all about that in our second segment. So we're going to have more with Dogs for Our Brave right after this short break. Stay with us. I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. Today's topic is Dogs for Our Brave. We've been learning about this great organization that's been around for how many years, Andy? How many years? 4 years.
Yeah.
And now I'm joined on set by Paul Scimone. He's the head trainer for Dogs for Our Brave, and you're going to kind of get into some details about all the hard work that goes into making
thank you for having
the dogs do the great work that they do. Before we get into those details, Andy, I know that you wanted to share a couple more stories with us, just really about the impact of the work that the organization does.
Yeah, we sometimes lose track of why we're here and why we are able to live the lives we live. And somebody asked me once, "What's the big deal about these dogs?" And I said, "Are you worried about a bomb going off here in this Italian restaurant we're eating in? Just a local establishment?" He said, "Well, of course not." I said, "Why not?" He said, "It just doesn't happen here." I said, "Why not?" And he was like, "Wow, I never really went that far with it." I said, "Belgium, Germany, France, they all have bombs going off in cafes all the time. They have all sorts of problems. We don't, because these guys are over there protecting our freedom, making sure the bad guys don't get here." And when they get back and they've been injured, we don't really treat them very well, which is why it's important for us as an organization to make these guys feel as good as we can and as comfortable as we can. The story I wanted to relate to you was Chris Roseberry, one of our first recipients, lost his right leg below the knee in a motorcycle accident. And he re-enlisted into the Army. They sent him back to Iraq into a combat zone with a prosthetic leg, carrying a 100-pound pack. He was leading a fire team after the Taliban, and he was on the second floor of a mud hut, and an RPG, which is a rocket-propelled grenade, hit above him, knocked him off onto the ground, injured his leg even more. They had to cut 4 more inches off his leg, got him back to Walter Reed. And I looked at him when we first started talking. I said, "Why would you re-enlist? What was your thought pattern?" And he was very, very calm and very simple. He said, "Mr. Gladstein, I'm an American soldier. My job is to protect the American people." Wow. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Because these guys are real heroes. When they get, and they all have PTSD when they come back. But when Clark Cavalier, one of our soldiers, who has double amputee, wheelchair bound, can't have legs, when he has anger problems, his dog Josie goes up to him and makes him pet her until his voice goes down. When Chris has nightmares at night, Gabby, his dog, jumps on the bed, pulls the covers off him to wake him up. You can't train for that. That's instinctive. But there are so many things you can train for, which Paul can go over, that we do individually for each veteran.
No, I appreciate you sharing that and bringing that up, because it's the service when we think of, when it's active at that moment, but it continues on for the rest of your life. And how do
Absolutely.
you live? How do you continue to live?
Absolutely.
In a healthy way. And so this allows for that, and the dogs allow for that. So thank you for sharing those two stories. And Paul, there's a lot of questions I want to ask for you. I don't even know where to begin, but I do want to make sure we're highlighting you're working a lot with rescue dogs. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And so is there, with that approach, is that because of the mission, or is there something behind that on the training side that makes it more, I wouldn't say advantageous, but different?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely part of our mission. I have a long history in the rescue field. That's kind of where I came from. And I think everyone's pretty fond of the idea of, helping a dog that's in a situation that's sort of dire, whether it's trapped in a facility or it's a victim of neglect, or it just needs, a mission of its own job. So we try to rescue and use rescued dogs for service work whenever we possibly can.
Okay, well, let's talk about how long. So we met Zulu. Zulu's a beautiful dog. How long does that training take, for example?
Well, it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months. You don't want to shortcut anything because you'll end up backtracking later. So, and the time really flies by anyway. The dogs are active, they're working, they're always obtaining new skills. And before you know it, they're ready to go.
And so Andy mentioned sort of, I think it's a good point, where it might be something where it's the service dog might be helping on a physical level to retrieve something, but then there's the emotional support. I mean, how do you talk about that difference in training? Where do you start with one area versus the other? I mean, and what I'm referring to is where it's accommodating physical needs versus emotional needs, or both. Like, how does that go about in the execution of the training?
Sure. So I always start with basic skills. Your sit, stays, downs, and then mixing in distractions and a lot of things that involve being in public. Service dogs are unique in that they're always in the public whenever they're working. So you teach your basic skill sets, and then you start with your more advanced commands, things particular like light, or teaching them to touch, for instance, and then touch light. So to teach a dog to turn a light on and off, that's how you do it, So you start with baby steps, you build a foundation, and then you build upon that until it becomes an advanced command, when you could say something as advanced as, go get me my car keys. And they understand, oh, go get keys. And they know they've associated those words with those commands.
Wow. It's really fascinating. I mean,
they understand English the same way we do. They just don't have the same amount of focus or patience. So just some repetition is what it takes.
Wow. And I notice a lot of times black labs are used, like different types. Is there a specific, is there any, with Dogs for Our Brave, are there certain dogs that you're welcome to training or not, or?
We're not breed specific. I think black labs tend to like our organization. We keep getting more black labs. But no, any dog, whenever I assess a dog to be a service dog, I'm looking for a set of skills and traits and a personality type. And, any type of dog could have those traits. It's just sort of a desire to work, and an intelligence, social intelligence, and just the ability to connect, and that desire to want to please. So really, any dog could have those traits.
So are you currently looking at, I was on your website and I noticed there's a form for dogs for submission. I think it was a link to click on. Are you currently looking?
Yes, I look all the time. Every week I go and look at dogs. A lot of times I go, look at, we have a local partner here helping strays in Columbia, Illinois. The APA we look at. And then as well as county animal control, we look there. And a lot of times we get referrals from Samaritans that have leads on dogs that are really great service dogs. It's funny because the public knows kind of whenever they can almost sort of pick out a dog that is a potential service dog. A lot of times people will refer me a dog and they'll say, I think this could be a service dog. And I'm surprised at how often they're picking out dogs that are very, very close to the criterion we're looking for. So it's almost like we innately know the dogs that are sort of cut out for that kind of service.
That's great. And so tomorrow you've got this, you're going to open house for the new facility. You're going to be able to train more dogs. How excited are you that this started with an interaction basically and has now grown to this full-fledged 501c3? What is going on in your head these days?
Well, it's just wonderful. I have a close friend that said, what's your goal? And I said, well, my goal is to get as many dogs as I can to as many needy servicemen and women. He said, no, what is your goal? And I thought, wow, when you think about it, all the amputees out there that need dogs, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide, which is pretty well swept under the rug by the VA. They don't talk about it very much. I can imagine if we could get 22 dogs a day trained for servicemen who have PTSD that are housebound, and most of them don't leave their homes. They're scared to leave their homes. 4th of July is the worst day of the year for servicemen because of the explosions and the fireworks. They're housebound. A dog that we could train for them would allow them to live a normal life. It's affectionate, it's a companion, it's a best friend, it's a buddy, and it does all the things it's supposed to do. And it takes a lot of servicemen and women are afraid to go out in public because people will point at them. They may have bad injuries, bad burns, maybe different amputated limbs. People point at them, and people are not very nice about it. when you have a service dog, it deflects a lot of the looks away from the veteran towards the dog, and it makes it much easier for them to go out in public and live a normal life.
How can, when people sometimes hearing this show think, how can I get involved? Are there volunteer opportunities that you have?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Volunteer opportunities, but we need funds.
Okay.
Because at $10,000 to $15,000 per dog, it gets pretty expensive to train these dogs. And plus the food and the pharmaceuticals and the veterinary care, it gets expensive. But we're not going to stop. I mean, we do whatever we have to do to make sure these guys get what they need. And because we're here today enjoying our lives because of them. And people don't look at it that way, Sarah. They don't realize, gosh, I live in this great country because these guys are over there putting their lives on the line and coming back limbless or bad psychological problems from bombs going off near them. And we owe it to them to make their lives as good as we can.
No, I think you do bring up a good point that there is this sort of, for lack of a better term, like a curtain that's sort of drawn in terms of our public discourse and how we talk about that. And
Absolutely.
I think just in the work that you're doing, it helps kind of pull that back a bit to have these discussions while also helping veterans. Is there anything, Paul, that you want to add to for anyone hearing this, whether it's dogs or how to get involved if they want to reach out because they have some dogs in mind? What do they do?
Yeah, so we're always taking volunteers. You can come visit us at 6244 Clayton. And again, to reiterate what Andy was saying, we definitely need donations to keep things going. I mean, if you're looking for a way to give back to your country and support our heroes, please visit our website and support us in any way you can. But if you just want to come walk dogs or see how everything works, come on up to the facility and you can go through our volunteer orientation and meet some service dogs.
And last but not least, it's a basically a one-page application a service person needs to fill out. It's not like this, and we're assessing them every day. We want to help our veterans out there that need help. We want to be part of their lives, and we want to make their lives better.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing that. We've got that information there for you on the screen. I think as Paul and Andy were both saying, the website has a lot of information for how you can get involved, to volunteer, to donate, or to be an applicant to receive a service dog, or to even submit a dog that you might have in mind. So head to dogsforourbrave.com. I also want to thank Corporal Christopher Miller, who's not on set at this moment, but who was with us in the first segment, for joining with us. And again, Paul and Andy, thank you so much for being here, and good luck with the open house.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll keep it right here on STL TV, Experience St. Louis.